Tonight's episode of ABCA At-Home Perspectives is made possible by Pocket Radar. Pocket Radar's smart coach app system, with its unique ability to automatically capture videos with embedded velocities, allows coaches to stay connected and work remotely with current players and new recruits. Their Bring Your Training Home initiative will provide education and resources, including webinars and a limited time discount to help players remotely train, develop, and be seen at home with video analysis tools. Check out their 2020 Expo Theater presentation located in the ABCA video library. Welcome to the American Baseball Coaches Association's At-Home Perspectives, brought to you and sponsored by Pocket Radar. Since 1945, the ABCA has been bringing coaches together to educate, mentor, guide, and support the greatest game in the world. Tonight is no exception, as we have a great conversation in store for you. Interact with us on Twitter. Send your questions to @ABCA1945 with the hashtag ABCAAtHome. Now, let's get this rolling.
Toughest team game of all, and it's the toughest game to play.
Toughness is a muscle. It's not a gene. You're not born with toughness.
When people start celebrating small things that occur on the field, the next thing you know, you get this small amount of energy, and then it just builds up. And the next thing you know, the environment, the energy in the environment that is created is very positive, and it's contagious, and it's very enthusiastic. And really, as a coach, that's what you want.
On behalf of the American Baseball Coaches Association, welcome and thank you for joining us. Our hope for these virtual coaching clinics is to educate, entertain, and inspire, to bring great coaching minds together so for a brief moment you can escape what is going on around you and lock into something that you're passionate about, coaching the game of baseball. My name is Jim Richardson, and I will serve as your ABCA at-home host. We will be bringing you live virtual clinics featuring a different panel discussing a different element of the game every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. These clinics will be archived and available to watch on demand within the My ABCA mobile app and the Coaching Resource Library section of our website. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves this evening, I'd like to make a quick announcement about one of our upcoming ABCA at Home episodes. As you may know, June 23rd of this year could have been the decisive championship game of the College World Series. To commemorate what could have been, the ABCA is looking to the past to remember and honor what once was and continues to be a legend of Omaha, the legacy of number 16, Augie Garrido. Garrido is the only NCAA coach to have won national championships with 2 different programs, and more impressively, he did so in 4 different decades. The ABCA will be assembling a panel of Garrido's former players and coaches to discuss his legacy, share stories, and help spread his message throughout the baseball community. Make sure to mark your calendars. This is an episode you will not want to miss. June 23rd, 8 p.m. Eastern. Now, tonight's conversation is centered around the topic of pitching, and we intend to focus on pitch development. But when you assemble a group like the one we have tonight, it may be in our best interest to just sit back and listen to what they think we need to hear. With that, I'd like to have our panel go around the horn and introduce themselves.
My name's Dusty Blake. I took over as the pitching coach at Duke in December of 2017. Prior to that, I was the head coach at Pfeiffer University, which is a school north of Charlotte, North Carolina, about 25 miles. Prior to that, I served as the pitching coach at Catawba College, Wofford College, and USC Upstate.
How you doing? Scott Brown. I'm the associate head coach at Vanderbilt University. I've been the pitching coach here for the last 8 years. Prior to coming to Vanderbilt, I was the assistant coach at St. John's for 9 years, and prior to that, at SUNY Cortland, my alma mater, for 4 or 5 years. So I really enjoy coaching college baseball. I've been doing it for 20 years, just for the competition and the thrill of the game, but more importantly, it's the moments like these, the relationships you develop through the time.
Hello, and my name is Fred Corral, currently the pitching coach at the University of Missouri. Just went through my third season here. Well, under the circumstances, would have been my third year. I've been fortunate enough to coach at many number of places. Started out with Pat Doyle at Delta College and moved on to Jerry Weinstein there at Sacramento City College, on to a little stint in professional baseball. Then my Division I college experience started at the University of Tennessee, to Oklahoma, back to Tennessee, to Memphis, to Georgia, and now here. The very fortunate spot of being at the beautiful state of Missouri.
Awesome.
My name is Jerry Weinstein. I'm a special advisor to scouting and player development with the Rockies. Been coaching in one form or another for over 60 years, from little league right up to the big leagues. Been fortunate enough to be on 2 Olympic staff, manage a team in the World Baseball Classic, and I've had a lot of great experiences.
My name is Nate Yeskie. I'm the associate head coach at the University of Arizona. This was my first year in this capacity with the U of A. Prior to that, I was at Oregon State University for 11 years and began my coaching career prior to Oregon State at my alma mater, UNLV, where I spent 3 seasons.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. Folks, I have one last detail for you. If you'd like to interact with us, you can send us a question on Twitter. You can tweet your questions to @ABCA1945 with the hashtag ABCA@home. We'll do our best to work them into the conversation. Don't forget to include your name and rep your program. Gentlemen, I'm always interested to find out who your coaching influences are, primarily because of the nature of coaching baseball. We all kind of steal from one another and change some of the language. And I wouldn't use the term steal. It's more like musicians. We're influenced by somebody that we really, really looked up to early in our career. So we're interested to find out who your influences are, how they impacted your career, and also if the stuff you learned from them, is it still relative now? Coach Blake, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, really hard to reduce this to 1 or 2 people. I wish I could, but I would be remiss to leave some folks out. I think, if I wanted to start with the coach I'm working for right now, Coach Pollard, actually crossed paths with him back in 2004 as I finished my degree in playing at Appalachian State. Joined a team with him, which was the first team I really had firsthand experience seeing success with. Won a conference championship and went on to the postseason. And just seeing the level of competitiveness he brought to the field every day. It's hard to expect players to be that passionate about what they're doing if the coach isn't. And so for that to be demonstrated on a daily basis, if there was snow and ice on the ground, if the weather was unfavorable, if we had to pull the tarp, fix the field, it didn't matter. There was a ton of energy and passion that you could see basically vibe throughout our team as a result of him demonstrating that. A couple guys on this panel, Brownie and Coach Corral, have had a chance to really connect with over the last couple years and have had great insight. A guy named Mike Schilt, who's the manager right now with the Cardinals, is a guy that spent a ton of time with me when I took over as a head coach. when I was at Pfeiffer, and just again finding ways to turn over ownership to players was one of the impacts that I felt like he made that had the biggest success as far as my communication with players, and allowing them to gain more ownership and turning over some of the control, which is uncomfortable for us as coaches to do. But at the same time, we allow these guys to maximize themselves as a result of that. But just a handful of guys there. And I guess the last guy I'd mentioned, Drew Thomas down at Coastal. When I took over the position at Duke, it was my first introduction to TrackMan. It's buttoned up a little bit as far as the communication and learning about how pitch data really affects the game. And I felt like he was a big help and just kind of helping me initiate myself with that data. And I think what's important in all these scenarios is these guys didn't really have anything to gain by allowing me to learn and maybe pick up on some tendencies from what they were already doing. So definitely appreciated some of those areas.
Awesome. Brownie, what about you? You've played for a great one up there at SUNY Cortland, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, I mean, I kind of consider myself, kind of like Dusty. I mean, reiterating some of the things he said. I mean, you come around a lot of great men in your game, and even the guys on this call, they've all given you something and impacted you in some way. But I just look at my path, and I played for Steve Owens at SUNY Cortland. I got an opportunity out of the gate to coach with Joe Brown, who's the current head coach at SUNY Cortland. From there, I was able to go on and coach with Ed Blankmeyer, an ABCA Hall of Famer at St. John's. And now I'm at Vanderbilt with Tim Corbin, an ABCA Hall of Famer. So you look at the people that I've been able to work under and play under. I mean, I've just been very fortunate, and I can take a lot of things from them in a lot of different things, I don't want to name just one in particular and stuff, but they all have their positive traits that lead them to success. And what it's helped me do is just kind of shape some of the things that I do on a daily basis. I mean, everybody you come in contact with in this game either influences you in some way, whether it's positive or negative, and you just continue to, move forward. So I consider myself a pretty fortunate man to work with those guys.
No doubt. Fred, what about you?
Yeah, it would take a long time to address that question and name all those that have influenced me in a great way. I jokingly say that if there was a Forrest Gump movie made about pitching coaches, I think I could play that part, because it seems like I've always been at the right place at the right time. And outside of the guys that are on this Zoom session, who I've learned a lot from. I would have to say, Pat Doyle, who got me started in the coaching and got me very passionate about the game. Jerry Weinstein was a big factor, and both those men factored in such a way that I named my two boys after those two. And, Jerry with his, hey, Fred, there's no always or nevers. And Fred, the main goal of your job is to eliminate your job. And, and then Andy McKay, who was on that staff, big. If I had a third child, it'd probably be some AJ, and Derek Johnson when I started out at Tennessee, breaking that barrier between that rivalry, as two pitching coaches, kind of sharing information. Brett Strom, who gave me my opportunity in professional baseball. And, one of the things, and I'm not going to go through the rest of my list, but a lot of people out there factored into my coaching career as a result of Brett Strom telling me, hey, Fred, before you become a master teacher, you first have to become a master learner. And that meant to seek out information and constantly learn. And everywhere I've been, I even interact with catching guys like Tom Griffin, and that catchers are very important to me. But dealing with catching coaches, it can be a little tough. But, and the new rock stars that I'm fortunately speaking with right now, the Eugene Bleekers, Dusty, who's on this call, Brownie and I have gotten a bit closer through these Zoom meetings. And, Nate and I, we started out pretty hot, and just somehow, through the coaching and friendship thing, kind of distance. But big time guys for me. And, and Steve, I'd be remiss to not mention Steve Merriman. He's really helped me out with the spiritual aspect of coaching. So, and I'm going to name one more, and then we move on. But the current guy that I'm currently working under, Steve Beezer. You start out coaching and you're always looking for that wonderful format that I had with Pat Doyle and Jerry Weinstein, and to be in this environment under a servant leadership that Steve Beezer demonstrates on a daily basis, and an egoless environment. I'm like I said, I'm always at the right place at the right time. Very lucky.
Awesome. Now, Coach Weinstein, very curious to hear about your influences, because so often during these conversations, you're listed as the majority of people's influences. Where does all this come from your standpoint?
Well, the reason for what you just said is because I'm pretty old. But I can tell you one thing. What Dusty said resonated with me relative to Chris Pollard and his passion and his competitiveness. I was 8 years old playing Little League, and our coach was named Murray Burke, and he had just come back from Korea, and he had passion for the game and was as competitive as anybody I've ever known. I think that ignited that quality in me. Also, I was lucky to go to UCLA at the time when John Wooden was there. John Wooden was not only a great basketball coach, but he was a tremendous baseball coach at Indiana State, and they tore down our baseball field to build Pauley Pavilion, and we're working out in the fall, and every day we come in and we shower in Pauley Pavilion, and they're practicing. And finally, I got up enough courage to go up to his office and ask his secretary if I could talk to him, and ask him if I could watch practice. So not only did I get to see a lot of good players there, but I watched John Wooden in action. I think that really helped me. The other thing was, we were in a conference. It was the CIBA, and Southern Cal was in the league, and Rod Dado was the head coach at USC. Has won 10 national championships. Dado was the best. I think when we played SC, I spent more time zeroing in on Dado than I did on the scoreboard of the game. And then when I was done, I struck up a relationship with him. Justin, his son, and I were friends, and I'd go watch practice and talk to him. And then there was a high school coach in Southern California, was a baseball encyclopedia. His knowledge of the game was unbelievable. A guy named John Herbold. He was also a Runyon-esque type character, and he freely shared knowledge. And then competing in Southern California and community colleges at that time was very competitive. And there was a guy named Wally Kincaid, who is, in my mind, the best baseball coach of all time. You can take John McGraw, you can take Tony La Russa, you can take all those guys, and let Wally coach their players, and then let them coach Wally players, and Wally would beat them both in both aspects. He was the best for me.
That's awesome. Coach Yeskie, what about you?
Well, I think my biggest influences were usually the guys that whooped my butt at some point. You look across at who you're playing sometimes, and they can be motivating factors. Certainly when you get beat by somebody, I think you want to find a way to even the score the next time around. So when you're younger, you don't really understand what those things are. I think you gravitate towards people who are trying to promote a better understanding of the environment that you're in. I go back to my high school coach, a gentleman by the name of Ron McNutt, was a small college middle infielder, played football, played basketball, all three sports at the school that he was at. And what's funny that we kind of joke around, us former players, that he's had 12 big leaguers at his high wow with no pitching background, and 11 of them have pitched in the big leagues. So it's been pretty good in that sense. Jerry was certainly an influence. Some times that I've had around him when I was a collegiate player, and our experiences with Team USA, it was certainly nice to see those. I started kind of, when I got in the coaching industry, Fred mentioned earlier, I saw some of his presentations at the ABCA, got a better understanding of maybe how to format some of those things. So that was nice. And I know Brownie and I have had a chance to lock horns. Dusty, I believe it'll come here at some point as well. So you start looking at the guys that are across the field. I go back again to my college days. Dave Snow was tremendous at Long Beach State and had done a a great job for years and always seemed to have different kind of mixes of guys. He could get guys to throw 80 miles an hour, have a lot of success. He could get guys up in the mid 90s that were maybe kind of overlooked coming out of the high school ranks. And then another guy Jerry's has had some time with, Skip Erdman. That was kind of my introduction at the high school level. I didn't really know a lot about the college game. If I flipped on television, where I grew up, we had 3 channels. When we moved out west, we got introduced to cable television, so I got a chance to watch whether it was WGN with the Cubs, maybe it was watching TBS with the Braves and watching some of those things. So you get a chance to see some of the coaches that are there. But, one of the funniest stories of somebody who really kind of influenced me was, I believe it was in 2017 when we got a chance to go back to Omaha. I had been drafted out of high school by the Dodgers. And one of the players that was drafted at that time was Darren Dreifert, who I watched and wanted to kind of emulate and get a better sense of like, wow, if that's really what the upper echelon guys look like, then I need to start paying attention. And so Gene Stevenson became kind of a guy that I followed and watched and just try to get a better sense of things. So in Omaha in 2017, I had a chance to meet him outside of a steakhouse, and he was actually looking to pass a message on to one of the guys that I was coaching with. So in a funny way, here it had come full circle for me to come back. And I had so many questions and so many things that I wanted to discuss with him. But unfortunately, our car was leaving, and I was hoping to maybe revisit that at some point. So long list. I think that's probably the common thread you see with the guys here on the panel tonight, is that we're all influenced by somebody, whether we're playing across the diamond from them, whether we see them on television, or whether they speak at the ABCA. There's always something that's very good to take away from those individuals.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, thank you, gentlemen, each one of you, for sharing. I think it does a great service to those men and the effort they put into developing you, building that relationship, but also it helps validates everything that you're going to say after this. So thank you very much. Now on to our next topic. And Brownie, I'm going to direct this at you. Last time I looked, we play this game because we all want to win it. And I'm kind of curious, what is winning pitching?
Well, JR, to me, first you have to define winning pitching, and I would define that as preventing runs on the scoreboard. And there's a lot of layers to that when you look at it. You can look at it and say it's limiting base runners and it's limiting damaging contact more than anything. Those are the first 2 you start with. JR, if you could put the staff analysis up for me. Perfect. And I've blocked out who the players are just to kind of protect their identity on it. But this isn't a team analysis report that we put together at the end of the year, or really you can do it at any time during the season. And it takes a look at things that we deem as key performance factors that lead to success on the field. Because this game's been around a long time. And, we look at things like the first 3, strike percentage, first pitch strike percentage, and A3P, which is ahead after 3 pitches. And we go those percentages and we give it a color-coded that we've put on a grading scale. And when I look at those 3, I define those 3 as a mentality more than anything. Because if they demonstrate, the ability to skill the baseball and command the baseball inside a bullpen, then the reason they don't inside the game is there's probably some sort of performance anxiety or a mentality that's taking place. So we call that attacking. And when you look at it, I think Max Scherzer said this is beautiful. You're either attacking or you're not. And 60%, strikes and first pitch strikes and ahead is kind of like the bare minimum when you look at it. We obviously shoot for higher, but when you start looking at the differences in these numbers and the small percentages, you can see that 1 to 2 batters can change those percentages over the course of a game and obviously over the course of a season. So he said casinos and insurance companies make billions of dollars on people betting on infrequent outcomes, and pitching is no different, which to me was like, when I explain that to guys, they start to understand that, the 00 batting average and what first pitch strike leads to and all that stuff. And I don't want to dive too much into those numbers, but those are key performance factors. And then we go to FIP, which is basically your fielding independent pitching. It describes you as like what you're capable of doing without the luck of the game. It's basically your RA. It eliminates the batted ball. And for those of you that don't know, it's really your strikeouts, your walks, your hit by pitches, and your home runs allowed. So we take a look at that number. And then we have WHIP, which includes, we like to include the hit by pitch, which is important. Those are just two, factors we put in there. And then the next two, they kind of define some things that you don't really think about. You got leadoff out percentage, which we all know how those percentages go. And then we have left on base percentage. You say left on base percentage. Well, to me, a real pitcher can be defined as how they pitch with traffic on base. So it's a way for us to take a look at it. And we give a final score to them based on the 20/80 scale, which kind of lets them know how they perform. And 50 being average and 80 being, your plus, 20 being you need some work to do. JR, if you could scroll down just to the next page there, you can see how they get rated right there. And I'll tell you, we've been doing this for 3 years at Vanderbilt. And the crazy thing is when you look at these numbers, over the course of a season, which this one was the 2019 season, you can really see who performs well. And the opportunities to pitch, they go with that flow too. And when you put these types of things up in your preseason and stuff like that, it really brings out the competitive edge of people because, they don't want to see themselves at the bottom. So that's one way we start with that. We rank that competition. JR, you could close that out for me. That'd be great. And you can actually open up the next one, the team analysis. And so what we do is we put you into a phase. You either attack hitters in phase one, and if you're not there, you need to get there. That's an important piece of it. And if you're able to get there, then we'll get to phase two, which is more about your sequencing and your location and how you execute your secondary stuff. But we need to get into attack mode. So just taking a look at this, winning pitching. And this is 2018. There was a plan and a roadmap. I look at these 2018 numbers, and as a whole, I say, these aren't bad. I'd like to see our, overall strike percentage go up. I'd like to see our first pitch strike percentage, but, we're 20th in the country in Ks per 9. But then I get to those walks per 9, 130th in the country, 3.98. And I said, wow, that's as bad as we've been in a while. That's not very good. So I take a look down at some other numbers, and I get down and I said, if you look at the LLO, it's leadoff out percentage. Then you look at leadoff walk percentage, 23%, not bad. But leadoff walk percentage that scores, 62%, kind of stuck out to me. More than a hit. It's very interesting. So, you take a look at it and you explain to your staff, you need to get a little bit better. And JR, scroll down to the next one. So you compare yourself to the best. That's what you do. Nada liked this. They won a national championship. And I was trying to get those numbers out of them at one point. Then I think he transitioned to Arizona, so it just became a little challenge. But you take a look at the difference in these numbers, there's not a lot of margin of error. You start looking at it and you say, okay. But then you get down to overall strike percentage. You're like, that's a big difference. That's a huge difference from the national championship team. First pitch strike, big difference. And you say, well, we got some swing and miss stuff. Oh, we struck out more guys than they did per 9 innings, but they're relatively close. Then you get to that walks per 9, and you say, whoa, there's a major difference right there. That's where something lies. That's going to be a half to another base runner per game. That's a big deal. So when you start to look at it, and then you just look at those numbers and you say left on base percentage, 63%, Nate's guy, 73%. So you start thinking about things and you say, we're not attacking enough. We're not attacking. We're not in phase one when we define these pitchers. So you develop a plan and you start to look at things and you combine the self-analysis with, what do you come up to? We have to have more of an attacking mentality, and we get to that. So if you scroll down to the next one for me, JR, and you come up with a plan and you start looking at it, and what you define it as is these numbers mean a lot. But really what happens is you peel back the layer and you start to understand that leadoff walk percentage is scoring at a higher percentage, not attacking the strike zone enough, not a high first pitch strike percentage, not a head after 3 pitches. You start looking at it and you start understanding that these pitchers are attaching an emotion with each pitch. They're looking at it, whether it's positive or negative, and they're attaching an emotion with it. And it's leading them either into a let their guard down, or it's getting into a position where they think, they start thinking about negative outcomes. That wasn't a good pitch. What did I do there? All that stuff. And it starts leading to positions where you're going, whoa, they're attaching pitch to pitch. So one of the things we set out in 19 is really getting clear and understanding was each pitch is its own. It doesn't matter. And all we're going to do is attack. We're really going to get into an attack. We're going to live and die with the result. And I know it's easier said, but what we're really going to do is get rid of emotions with each pitch. And to tell you the truth, I don't care about the count at all. I don't care. You get to 2 strikes, all right, execute your stuff in a better location. Fine, because that's got an outcome. You get to 3 balls, you better grab a little bit more plate. Fine. But 0-0, 1-0, 1-1, I don't care. We're going to attack. We're going to live and die. We're going after the plate, and we're going to trust our stuff. And you look at the comparison of these numbers, and you say, okay, well, batting average and balls in play went up. Well, sure, because we attacked more. We also had a fast turf, which probably helped. But then you start to look at the other numbers. Batting average with 2 strikes. Overall strike percentage, 62. There it is compared to Nate's team. First pitch strike didn't improve all that much. But what did was the response. The response improved, all right? Swing and miss went up. Ks per 9. Walks got better. Walks got better. Not by a ton, but a big margin of error. But you get down to the bottom, and that leadoff walk percentage scored at a much lower rate. Much lower, while the leadoff single remained about the same. What's that tell you? It tells you there's a winning mentality, all right? And that's when you come back to that left on base percentage. That improved. All those things improve, all right? And you get yourself into that type of mentality, that leads to winning pitching, right? Because you're going to get base runners. You got to limit damage, right? But that's kind of how we define that at Vanderbilt.
Awesome. That's awesome. Now, Dusty, I saw something that you had sent in where you were kind of looking at the metrics between the 3-2 fastball that Duke had thrown in at-bats over the course of a year and the 3-2 breaking ball. And the statistics and what you looked at was mind-boggling to me. Do you mind sharing that? Because I kind of think it dovetails into what Coach Brown is talking about attacking.
Yeah, it really does. And I love all of the information Brownie's sharing right there, because it just brings life to the value of what's going on and how these guys prepare and what they need to pay attention to. And, for us, it's about trying to win counts initially. If we win counts, we feel like we win games, and becoming obsessive about winning counts. But, yeah, if you want to open up that PowerPoint, and we can jump to that slide if you want, or we can look a little bit more the pitch distribution or the pitch usage collectively that leads to some of those advantages for us, whichever one you feel like you want to dive into.
Is that down here?
Yeah, right above that.
Right above that one?
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, so in this presentation is talking a little bit about how to look at the pitches we're using and how they match up, and how to determine their impact. But in this one specific slide, we're talking about count leverage, and a 3-2 count is a huge leverage count. And for us this year, you can just see when we threw fastballs in the zone, the results compared to the off-speed pitches we threw in 3-2 counts. Now, obviously, this is just over 16 games before the season was cut short, but just an enormous separator right there. And then if you're getting yourself into a position where you understand this and you've got 2 outs and the winning runs in scoring position, potentially this may pop up in your head as a result of some of the preparation and just knowing we're having a ton of success in this count, and a guy gets on first base. Well, they don't win the game right here potentially if we make a mistake.
Makes sense. Coach Corral, do you have anything else you'd like to add to this winning pitching? I mean, it's attacking, and based on what Coach Blake is saying, it's attacking. What do you guys see in Missouri in the SEC?
Well, it's not far different from what those 2 outstanding coaches presented right there. I really enjoyed listening to that. The only thing I could add on top of those numbers is the thing I find is just confirming the fact that my guys are capable, and knowing that they're capable in any situation. They've got the stuff. There's a reason why they're here. And I put a lot of emphasis in kind of sharing with my guys, about, a warrior mentality and fighting for something bigger than themselves, committing to each pitch. But Dusty got me on this book, the Checklist Manifesto, and it got me thinking about how, pilots went about their business and the importance of that. And I use that analogy a lot with my guys. Is they've got to know all the things that Brownie and Coach Blake put up. They're the pilot of a plane, and we've got to have a smooth takeoff, and we've got to have a smooth landing. And when they get to that bump, they got to know that 35 other souls are in the back of that, and we got to have a safe trip. So outside of the numbers, which were outstanding, another thing that I would say is, leadoff walks. How you handle that as a coach is very important. If you're stressing the fact that leadoff walks are absolutely terrible, one of the things I would encourage guys to do is to change your thoughts about the situation. You change your thoughts, the things you look at change. As opposed to a leadoff walk, I try to convince my guys that it was a seeing eye single, an undefendable single, which a walk is. And I guess in changing the thoughts about something would be, I think the 2.3 runs are scored in a bases loaded, no out situation. Well, as opposed to going, oh crud, that means I got to work diligently to not let the guy at first to score, because percentages would say those things. I want my guys to think, well, why isn't that batting average 300 or the runs scored 3.0? Why is it only 2.8? Because I get out of this situation. I know this that I could easily get a pop up, free someone, a ground ball double play. So if we change our thoughts about something, the things themselves, I believe, will change.
No doubt. Now, Coach Weinstein, Coach Yeskie, do you have anything to add in regards to how you would define winning pitching?
If I could just touch on one thing that Dusty said about 3-2 pitches and the importance in showing his off-speed batting average and fastball batting average. Every week we have a Zoom session with our catchers, and I obviously spend a lot of time with the catchers and the minor league guys, and we talk about the importance of each pitch and the value of each pitch. And one of the questions we threw out at our guys this week was, hey, what's the most important pitch in a sequence of pitches in an at bat? And it jumped out. It's first pitch. It's 1-1. It's this. It's that. It's the other thing. Most guys talk about the first pitch, and then they talk about that 1-1 pitch because it swings the count from 1-1 to 2-1 or 1-1 to 1-2, and in those types of sequences, the biggest swing count is 2-0 or 2-1 rather, going from 2-1 to 2-2 or 2-1 to 3-1 is the greatest increase in OPS. It's about 821 in OPS. But when you really look at the importance of pitches, the most important pitch, the most run prevent, run allow significant count is 3-2, because, and we talk a lot about shadow pitches or balls, that pitches that could go either way. And as a catcher, if you get that 3-2 pitch called a strike and the guy's out, as opposed to that 3-2 shadow or marginal pitch called a ball and the guy's on base, where it comes, the value is almost 0.6 of a run. Now, over the course of a season, where there were upwards of 10,000 pitches being thrown in the big leagues, and numerous 3-2 counts and numerous close pitches on 3-2 counts, that when you add up the run prevented value, and when you look at run prevented, it's about 8 or 9 runs prevented. So if you had, maybe 15 or 20 3-2 counts that went your way, and you prevented eight fewer runs, that leads to a big league win. And if you look at the value of a big league win, let's look at wins above replacement in professional baseball. It's worth anywhere between $8 and $10 million. So if you had a catcher who really could receive, especially with 3-2, and turn those pitches around, he's worth a lot. He's worth a lot more than he's being paid. I'll tell you that right now. I have one other thing, but and maybe let Nate talk, and maybe it's more appropriate somewhere else. Just being more granular with first pitches, and when it's appropriate to talk about first pitch data, I'd like to do that.
Awesome. Coach Yeskie, do you have anything to add to the what is winning pitching?
Well, I'll go back to what I believe it to be at the start. I think that the numbers give us a chance to kind of filter through and give us a better sense of how each guy is getting to where he is and where he may have gotten off the path. But I think that you look at two things. One is identifying that player. The guys who tend to perform better, to me, are comfortable with who they are. They know what they have on that particular day, and whether that's their best stuff or something that's maybe far short of that, they're going to find a way to make those things work. And identifying that and finding comfort in that, I think is important, because you'll see a lot of guys that they may chase the radar gun and feel good about being one of the harder throwers on the staff. Some guy is credited with having the best breaking ball, and some of those things they get, I think, artificially propped up as being something of value and something that's important, and they lose really kind of the perspective of the present moment. I love seeing The Last Dance here that we've had a chance to tune into the last couple of weeks, and how it really kind of identifies what Michael Jordan's been able to do over the course of his career, and that was just really live in the moment. And so Brownie touched on it. When you don't get involved in the count, you don't get involved in the hitter, you don't get involved in the weather or what people want to refer to as controllables, and you just focus on the things that you can control, it's going to make, I think, executing that pitch, maybe running a pick play, doing some of the things that you need to do that come into run prevention, that much more important. Because if you know who you are and you're comfortable with that and you make it work, then ultimately it's going to allow you to stay in the moment a lot better. And when you can do those things, I think it's going to give you more, perspective, more clarity, and certainly a more comfortable kind of platform to work from.
Now, I don't want to assume anything, but it sounds like to me that you're saying that, the coach has to have a ridiculous understanding of the count and the impact of the count and how these things change. But the communication to your player and the guy on the mound is always, you're living in the moment. This is the only pitch right now, right here. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I believe so. And I think that that's our job as college coaches, is knowing that personality on the mound. Some guys are going to be far more comfortable doing things. And when you give them a chance to take more ownership, which we want them to do, you'll find out that a guy's going to tell you, hey, coach, I'm far more comfortable throwing a 3-2 change than I am a 3-2 breaking ball. I'm far more comfortable pitching in with an elevated fastball than I am down and away, which is something that some people may just kind of gravitate to naturally. So you have to know your personnel, because you can't ask them to do things that they're not comfortable with, or you're just not going to get the results that you're looking for. And I think that the more diverse that individual is, obviously that's going to give you more options. But when push comes to shove, you're going to go with one of your two best options. And now if it's a day where you've got your third pitch or your fourth pitch working for you, great. But when push comes to shove, Jerry can speak to this at the big league level, that catcher's got to put down that number that guy he knows wants to throw that pitch. Not something that you just think. You got to put down what you know he's comfortable attacking with. And now it goes back to, again, connecting with that person, I think, on a more just level playing field, where you understand who he is and what makes him tick.
Makes sense. Thank you, Coach. Coach Weinstein, do you want me to come back to you so you could get more in that little first pitch stuff?
Yeah. Could you flip that from that PowerPoint, that one screen on first pitch strikes?
Yes, sir.
Keep going. Keep going. There you go. Back up one.
Yes, sir.
One more. All right. This data is from Inside Edge, and I've worked with Inside Edge since 1986. And it was funny. We were in the Pan Am games in 1986, and I'm pencil and paper scouting a game, and there's like 15 people in the stands, and I'm watching Cuba play, and this guy comes up and sits down next to me, and he says, "Hey, coach," he says, "you're pitching Gurriel all wrong." I said, "What? What are you talking about?" It was a guy named Jay Donches. He says, I have this company and I have this software protocol." I said, "Hey, buddy, tomorrow night you're going to sit in the TV truck and watch it from center field." And so I've been a big inside edge guy. And this is not a promotional testimonial, but anyway, that's where the data comes from. But basically, 0-0 pitches have tremendous impact on the at bats. And is this always or never? I mean, Maddox would throw 0-0 balls intentionally to come back and throw 1-0 changeups for strikes and get people out. But in general, I think 0-0 strikes give you a lot of bang for your buck. Number one, just overall batting average. And what that means is that strikes, that includes strikes that are taken, strikes that are pulled foul, strikes that are outs, and strikes that are hits. And in professional baseball, less than 8% of 0-0 strikes turn into hits. It's about 92.7% of Major League 0-0 pitches end up as an out or an 0-1 count. Now, when you look at the OPS type stat material, 0-0 contact does produce a 341 batting average and a 903 OPS. But when you really factor that down, 65.9%, you're getting guys out. So I think there is some value to it. And when Nate talked about the attack mode and Brownie talked about the attack mode, and I think everybody feels the same way. I know Fred does. Once you get to 0-1, the numbers really change. 239 batting average, 283 on base, 372. And when you pressure hitters with strikes, when you almost take the decision making out of their head, where there's no recognition, every pitch is going to be a strike. Man, there's a lot of pressure on that hitter. Here's an interesting stat: the expected runs after a first pitch ball versus a first pitch strike, almost twice as much. And then they did a study on major league pitchers, which and I think Brownie's data kind of supported that with 57% first pitch strikes for his staff. And if you improve it to 80%, and everybody, so 80%, nobody can throw 80% strikes. Well, on 3-0 counts, the strike percentage is 80%. So they can throw 80% strikes. But if you did that, pitcher's ERA is going to drop significantly. You get an entire staff to do that, and you'll give up 100 fewer runs. Now, we're not improving their stuff. We're not improving their location. We're not improving anything except one stat: throwing more first pitch strikes. Now, is that going to change during the season once you start throwing a lot of first pitch strikes? Yeah, they're going to fire a lot more often earlier in the count. So that's not a stat that will hold up necessarily over the year. The most prevalent count in baseball, everybody gets an 0-0 count, 175,000 plus 0-0 counts. This was a real interesting one for me. That 16, and I'm a big guy. If you just really factor things down to what's important, and you take two stats: walks and base on balls. If you walk fewer guys and strike out more on the pitching catching side, and if you walk more and strike out fewer times on the offensive side, and add those two together, and you look at the teams that get to the playoff, most of them are on the positive side of that strike walk metric, and that comes from Bill James. But what we see, that 69% of strikeouts occur after first pitch strikes. That's not to mean that every time you throw a first pitch strike, you're going to strike the guy out 69% of the time. 70% of base on balls occur after ball one. Okay, so now the $64,000 question is, well, how do I throw more first pitch strikes? Generally, it is target and pitch related. Highest percentage strike pitch to highest percentage location. Hopefully you have more than one pitch you can throw, one fast, one slow, where you have some speed spreads in there so they can't sit on one speed. But basically pitching more to the middle of the plate, because guys don't hit their target anyway. In the big leagues, the best target hitters in the world with fastballs only hit their target 24% of the time. And when I say hit their target, I'm talking about 4-inch miss or more. But basically, digging into Brownie's chart there, just in the first pitch strike area, I think that there's value in throwing first pitch strikes. I think it's good for for your defense. It's great for the umpire. He gets in that strike calling mode, and you're really pressuring hitters by being aggressive and coming at them. But to do it, you got to go to high percentage strike pitch or pitches to high percentage locations.
sense. Makes sense. Thank you for sharing. Um, Coach Blake, I'm interested to find out what are the trends you are seeing from your opponent's pitching staffs. How are they attacking Duke hitters? Have you noticed any trends? Or is the fastball still king? Are you seeing a ton more cross count breaking stuff? Like, how are you guys being pitched? And yeah, I'm kind of interested to hear what you've seen. And I know the sample size was small this season, so over kind of like the last year.
Yeah, no, I think that's a broad question because you really see a lot of teams have their own identity and what they're trying to establish. And so I would imagine based on what a coach really buys into and believes as their staff's philosophy, you kind of see that demonstrated some on the field. We'll face some teams that just come out after us relentlessly with off speed and a lot of different counts, trying to get our guys to chase, to go after a pitch that maybe we aren't looking for in a favorable hitter's count. And then I know, teams like Vandy, this is a discussion Brownie and I had in the past, man, they're just really good at fastball command, and they're really good at command up in the zone for the guys that have a little bit of ride to it. They're not missing up there, they're attacking you up there. And obviously to some clear advantages as well. So I think depending on, again, the strength of the pitcher or a philosophy behind the coach or the team, you start to see some patterns there. But I didn't feel like, I felt really good about, how our lineup was set up and what they were capable of this year. And Coach Steen does a good job with those guys. And you didn't see a weakness or a consistent theme and how guys really tried to attack our hitters. I didn't feel like.
Nice. Thank you. Brownie, same question to you, but I kind of want to flip it a little bit because I don't know if you know this or not, but I was at Belmont University for 2 years and we played you over at First Tennessee Ballpark. And it was the 2019 season, your midweek starter that you had wasn't a flamethrower, but he was by far and away the most complete pitcher I had seen that year. He then went on to help you guys immensely down the run when you won the national championship game. But I know you have a couple of different weapons, and is there kind of an overall philosophy that you guys focus on and how you're trying to attack hitters?
Well, first, Jared, we just identify the strength of the pitcher. I mean, that's the first thing we do. There's no overriding philosophy on, count selections. I mean, you have to be unpredictable, but at the same time, there are, each pitcher has their pitches graded out. This is my best, this is my second best, this is my third, and this one's not so good. Well, I mean, to me, it's pretty simple math. If one's not so good, we're not going to throw it a lot. I can tell you that right now. That doesn't mean we won't pull it out with that at times either when it's, but there's just, you talk about that guy, that was Mason Hickman. I mean, he can execute, and it may not be overly hot on the radar gun, but he commands his fastball to all four quadrants, mixes in a two-seamer. He's got a break, a curveball, and a slider with a rare change. I mean, and I think when you look at like pitch calling, those are the things when you have 4 or 5 pitches you can go to when you start to see some adjustments. That's to me, it's in-game adjustments. That's the whole key is really trying to see who's adjusting, who's not. I think somebody recently asked Brent Strom if he was going to change his pitching philosophy, and he said, "I'm not changing anything until the hitters show me I need to." So, as far as pitch usage and pitch calling. So, I mean, I don't want to make it any more difficult than it is, but there's really no overriding philosophy inside our program. If there is, it's pitcher's strengths more than anything.
Nice. Coach Corral, do you want to add anything to that? Is there any philosophy you subscribe to? Is it pitcher strength orientated? Is it hitter's weakness?
It's both for me. I do rely heavily more on the pitcher's strength, as Brownie described. But one of the things that I've really centered in on a great deal is the concept or the belief that I have in the fact that I don't believe hitters can see speed, and I don't think they can see spin while trying to hit a baseball. They can do all that while they're taking one. And one of the things that I think is very important is teaching my guys how to vary speeds with their pitches. If their fastball is their strength, you can easily make a BP fastball equally as strong. And one of the sponsors for this clinic here that we're putting on, Pocket Radar, is the MVP for me on that. And if you wanted to go to that slide, I have on there, I believe it's might be the third one in, and and this is one of the things that I wholeheartedly believe in, and it's teaching my guys to vary speeds with all their pitches. We throw a fastball, BP fastball, a changeup, a BP changeup, and I've even had guys with a breaking ball and a BP breaking ball, and that's in knowing their strengths and what they can do. And I think it's a very easy teach when you are able to give your guys their velocity reads. And one of the keys to doing this system and giving a guy an understanding of it is have them throw their max fastball. Max fastball. You can be in a bullpen and it's, hey, that's 90. Try to get 91. 91. Try to get 92. 91. Try to get 92. 91. Okay, today's bolt today in the pen is 91. So now I want you to throw this one 86. And it's amazing. It's truly amazing to see a guy then down ticket from what he knows is his max. And then you go through a bullpen sequence where you're just saying, hey, you tell me what you're going to throw here. Well, the easiest one for him to throw is, hey, I'm going to throw this one 91 because he knows that's his max fastball. But the more I can give my guys an understanding of that, the better I can. And I really think that I believe wholeheartedly that the big leagues should take a lesson from Jamie Moyer. Jamie Moyer stayed in the big leagues till the age of 50 with something like this. And I've got that little gas gauge that we see all in all our vehicles, and it'll give you your estimated range for that current tank. Mm-hmm. It's 458 in that clip, and then the average per gallon, that 22.1. Well, as that accelerator goes and that green line on the top goes, well, that blue's the average. As you hit that accelerator, it may go down to 16 miles to the gallon. When you're in the town and you'll see it fluctuate up to the 35, and in doing so, by throttling, you see the gas gauge, the average per gallon go up. Well, I think of that in years. And if I can add 3 years to a guy's career, those 3 years could be allowing a guy to buy his own little country. So, keeping guys healthy and keeping guys safe, because right now it's fastball, breaking ball. You saw a lot of breaking balls in the big leagues right now. And there's no greater tunneling pitch for me than a fastball and a BP fastball, or a fastball and a change. Hitters can't see speed. And if they could see speed and spin, then our catchers would not need to drop signals down to know what pitch is coming straight at them. So, I rely heavily on that when I'm talking about attacking hitters.
No doubt. That's do you have any I don't want to say like hard, fast, deadpan rules, but are you always looking to add to, essentially the hitters inside pitches, add velocity there, take away on the outer half? Do you have anything that you're working with your guys and saying, hey, this is why this will work or not?
Yeah, no, it's an easy sell. And Perry Husband, back in 2007, he sent me a book for me to look at, and it was when he came out with his effective velocity, filthy book. And he put on there hitters' attention theory, and that hitters could only cover a range of 6 miles an hour. So when I look at those paces, we generally want to try to drop 6 on each. And then, if we got a guy that's throwing 91 miles an hour and he's throwing his fastball at 86, he's got his changeup at 80 miles an hour, we want to throw that changeup at 74. So now a hitter's got to cover 91 to 74 before he sees a breaking ball. And that's a tough sell, and I learned that while at the University of Memphis, where we did that in an inter squad. And Coach Zulli and Coach Schoenrock said, hey, we got to stop that. It's scrambling the eggs of our hitters right now. because you take away their educated guess of, hey, the count dictates that he's going to throw a breaking ball, his tendencies to throw a breaking ball here or whatnot. When they have to recognize that, I think we threw like 54 innings, only gave up 10 hits because all the pitchers were mine, and only 8 walks and 54 punch outs. And I asked my pitchers, hey, who wants to start throwing their breaking ball? And out of the 17 guys, 15 hands raised up. And I said, are you kidding me? If you had these numbers, you'd be an All-American. And I looked at the 2 that didn't raise their hand, and I said, help me explain this to these guys. And they go, what's the question, coach? And I said, who wants to throw their breaking ball? And both of them raised their hands. So, I mean, all my guys were like, when you tell a pitcher he's got to slow down a ball, it's like that Maverick Merlin episode or scene in Top Gun. I'm going to put on the brakes and he's going to fly right by me. And you're going to do what? They have a hard time with it. So I suggest pitcher's BP, where you kind of run through that. And I gave them 5 rounds of that same type of sequence, letting them know the pitches. And when they saw how out of time that they got while in the box, I mean, they'll rake with fastballs and they'll rake when they know it's a changeup. But when they have to see the speeds there, you see those hits drop even more. So that was a strong conveyance that I got to my guys. For that.
No doubt. Thank you, Coach. Coach Weinstein, does this factor into the deceptive part of pitching? Is this something you guys work on at the big league level, or is it just pedal to the floor all the time?
That's not my phone. That's my wife's phone, by the way. Before I say that, in the early '60s, there was a guy named Ron Squire who coached at Mount Sac JC, and he wrote a book on pitching. I want to say it was called Championship Pitching, but at that time he talked about 98% fastballs and 90% fastballs and extra fastballs and get it in there. And I don't know if you can still get that book, but it was an outstanding book. If you want to throw that slide up there on deception, that would be great.
Yeah. Stretched a little.
I think go back a little bit.
Pitch calling absolutes.
More. Let's do this one first. Go back one. I think uncomfortable at bats. I think that ultimately, if you can create uncomfortable at bats for hitters, you have a tremendous advantage. Hey, I don't want to hit off that guy. Whether it's velocity or whatever it happens to be. But I just kind of listed like 6 things that create uncomfortable at bats. Number 1, and not necessarily in this order, but high percentage strikes. For me, 70. Our goal should be and everybody's individualized. I mean, for one player who has bad command, obviously that's too big a leap to get him to 70%. Maybe 50% at this time, but short-term, realistic, attainable goals. But ultimately, we'd like to get them up to 70% strikes, 65% first pitch strikes, and backup strikes with strikes. I'm really big on getting to 2 strikes in a hurry, because big league batting average with 2 strikes is like 185. We don't do a very good job with 2 strikes. Nobody really does. One year, Dustin Pedroia led all of baseball with 2 strikes, and he hit like 290. Here's another one, and this is a very difficult one. Pitching inside for strikes. And when I talk about inside, I'm talking about belt line or above. Sometimes they'll stand off the plate because they can't handle the ball in, and I'm just going to try and get the ball in between the plate and where they stand, and then being able to elevate. One of the problems with pitching inside for strikes is this. Number 1, if you're not good at it, one of 2 things happens. You either drill the hitter or you yank the ball over the plate because you don't want to miss in. And then the other aspect of developing this skill is, when do you develop it? Bullpens do not develop the ability to pitch inside for strikes. Now, it gives you a leg up, it gives you a start, but you got to go against live hitters. So now if you're playing inter-squad games and you've got a pitcher who is not very good at pitching in, and we're trying to work on pitching in, and he's scattering guys in the batter's box, and you take a chance of someone getting injured, that's not a good thing either. And then if like in professional baseball, if you're not good pitching in and you're drilling people, well, your guys are going to get drilled just because. And so I think that we're really challenged on how we develop this skill. And one, Fred came up with a really good one where maybe together we did, where guys stand sideways and they just put their glove, like if I'm going to stand up here. So if I'm a right-hand hitter and I'm the catcher, I just put my glove up right here. And so I'm trying to throw for the glove and the hitter's there. And as a left-hander, I'll just go the other way where I backhand it. So our thought on pitching in, number one, is going in, miss in. And the other thing, what a lot of guys do is they're not good at it, so that's a max effort pitch. And to me, it's more location over stuff. And so, we talked about a little bit extra going in. To me, the location is more important than the stuff, because most hitters have a really tough time getting to that ball in. They end up getting jammed. They end up pulling it 400 feet foul, or they end up just taking the pitch. And one of the things is, and if you look at a baseball game in inning number one, you got every hitter on the top step. And one of the things he's looking for is this guy going to pitch in? Because hitters are notorious for doing what? Eliminating zones or eliminating pitches. And early on, if you demonstrate that you can throw inside for strikes, then what happens? Now it opens up, in reality, 22 inches of plate for you. Because if you had a ball that's 2.5 inches in diameter on the edge of the plate at 17 inches, you got 22 inches. So now the guy's got to protect a lot more strike zone. He can't leak or dive to get to the outside pitch because he's eliminated the inside pitch, because he knows that you can't command the ball in. Now, moving the hitter's feet, pitching inside for balls, as long as it's below their shoulders, I think you have to do that. But with good hitters, if you just move their feet and can't pitch in for inside for strikes, that's not good enough. The fourth thing would be the ability to cross count. And you talked to it before about throwing off-speed pitches and fastball counts. Hitters are uncomfortable when that happens. And then Fred alluded to what Perry Husband talked about, common ball flight. We'd like to see common ball flight out of the hand, especially 20 plus feet out of the hand, where the hitters are making a decision on where the pitch is going to be when it gets to the plate. And then this we're seeing more and more, and this comes more into the deception phase, but tempo. And there's a number of different ways that hitters become uncomfortable with tempo. For instance, and we're seeing this a lot, we see a lot of leg kick loads where guys lift their legs and they kind of float. And so now, as a pitcher, if I go slow and then speed up, or I go fast and then slow down, and especially out of the stretch, or just quick pitch or hold the ball a long time, that type of tempo. Overall, working fast is really important, but I think that varied delivery tempo will affect those hitters that have some type of leg kick timing, but also when we say, oh, well, he's got a repeatable delivery. Well, most don't, but if it's a repeatable delivery for the pitcher, that means it's a predictable, repeatable delivery for the hitter. And how much do we want to be predictable to that hitter relative to our delivery? So I think there's some bandwidth in there for changing our delivery relative to tempo, or even double pumping or pitching. I mean, I always felt like if you're getting hit out of the windup and there's no one on base, they're timing you up pretty good. Maybe I go out of the stretch and I go quicker, or I change my tempo. But just food for thought, not a sermon from the mount, not etched in stone, but just some things to think about relative to uncomfortable at-bats.
No doubt. No doubt. Thank you, Coach. Now, Coach Yeskie, if I'm not mistaken, you made a bunch of guys feel uncomfortable when you were at UNLV, because I believe you were still the single season strikeout record holder there. What was your bread and butter? What was your go-to pitch?
Probably the fastball in that Jerry talked about, because I also led the league. I set the school record twice for hit by pitch. So nice. They kind of went hand in hand. I just figured if somebody was going to get to first, they were going to have to earn it. So maybe that opened up the other side of the plate. But, really kind of what Jerry and Fred are talking about, I think, go hand in hand. Jerry talks about location being really, I think, the premier aspect of pitching. Everybody that's playing on that team has been evaluated at some point to be able to get out. So location kind of trumps all. Stuff can get away with some mistakes and cover that, but you know, Fred's talking about how we're creating that separation, how we're doing some of those things. And I think a great method for guys to kind of put into play, whether it be at the high school level, the college level, or beyond, is kind of getting guys to understand how to drive their own car. And if you're driving your fastball at 80%, what does that look like on the pocket radar? If you're driving it at 85%, what does that look like? You can do the same things with your breaking balls, because a lot of guys at our level will start to really kind of favor one breaking ball maybe more than the other. They might like the slider but have a curveball, or vice versa. So I do think there's value in being able to change speeds with the pitch that you're most comfortable with. So how do you teach that? And how do you get guys going into that sense? Well, let's throw your breaking ball at 75%. What does that look like? And now when you're measuring those things with the information that we have as it pertains to data, you can start to find out that there's a lot of hitters throughout the game that'll just give up on a breaking ball early, especially if their timing isn't there, where maybe you've shown him the harder one early. You know that he typically wants to hunt fastballs. Well, now I can teach my guy to throw it at 75%. It still, looks the same out of the hand, but now all of a sudden the speed differential's subtracted another 4 to 5 miles an hour. Now he gets off a good swing, but he's hooked it foul, and we've really kind of messed up his timing, because really the hitter's job is to arrive on time. Our job is to make sure that doesn't happen. So if we can create soft contact, if we can create contact to a certain part of the yard because of the way that the park plays, maybe the weather conditions are coming in as a factor because the wind's blowing in or out a certain direction, now we start to do those things. But again, I can't stress enough, I think what Fred and Jerry are saying go hand in hand, that we're trying to establish location, but we're also trying to establish it at a speed that's going to minimize damage.
Now, in regards to location and speed, obviously one of the other deceptive factors in pitching is movement. Coach Blake, I'm very curious, is that something you work with your pitchers, is to create some sort of cut or some sort of sink or a little more arm side run on their fastballs, in addition to kind of messing with the velocity a little bit?
I mean, yeah, I think with every guy, it's just really important to understand first, like, what he does well. And you just really want to support the things that he's already doing really well and give him some thorough feedback in an environment that allows him to continue to do that. And then if you find there are areas that you want to build up or that you want to adjust, or maybe you're not getting the feedback you want from the hitter, now that's when you can start adding different shapes and movements with certain pitches. And so, I mean, yeah, I think it's great if you've got a guy that can run a right on right two seamer and then throw a four seam kind of up and away. That's a really hard combo. The deceptiveness is pretty challenging for hitters, for guys that can do both of those, but it's also incredibly advanced as well. And, we do start with the idea of just making sure we're challenging the zone and winning counts first, because all of our stuff, all good pitchers are a lot better when they're in advantage counts, and really good pitchers that aren't finding themselves, at least stuff-wise, in advantage counts don't perform nearly as well. So we certainly want to look at the combination of both of those. But yeah, I mean, as far as getting into the data, you can certainly help guys understand what the ball's doing and how it's traveling to the plate.
Makes sense. Brownie, so let's say we have a guy who's fairly advanced. Is that something you look to develop with them if they have a plus fastball? Is that something that you're trying to get them to move around, or is that something that you just let them figure out on their own? Yeah.
Well, I mean, if a guy has a plus fastball, I'm probably going to leave that fastball alone, and what I'm going to do from there is try to develop, some sort of movement profile of secondary stuff off of that fastball. That's where the data comes into play. And I think, I had a conversation the other day with Adam Plucko from the Indians, who was really, really good. And he said that the challenge sometimes at the higher level is that the data becomes very singular pitch. We look at the analytics and it's just looking at a singular pitch. And really what you have to do, there needs to be a synergy between all your pitches. And the ability for a guy like him, who's only thrown 88 to 91, but has good vertical break on his fastball, I mean, that's movement. I mean, that really should be defined as movement. I think sometimes we define movement as arm side run, but ride and rise and all that stuff and run, whatever way it's moving is moving. And if you can create more diversions in the same tunnel, now it becomes difficult to navigate for a hitter. So you take a guy like Plucko, now he's got the 12-6 curveball off of that fastball that doesn't pop. So now you really have a tough time. Then he can throw a slider and a changeup at you, and he becomes very unpredictable. And that's where the synergy between all the pitches comes into play. I think sometimes in training environments, it's easy to look at that fastball and say, well, that's a really good fastball, but why is it play? Or that's not a good enough fastball. It's only 88, 89. Well, it is a really good fastball when you put 3 aces with it, and now it becomes a much better pitch. So it's really just taking what Dusty said is, what the guy does well, and how can you add to it? It's really a key. I took a guy like Hickman this year. It's a great example. His slider was inconsistent last year, and he came in, he wanted to work on a cutter. He felt like he needed a diversion going away from the right-handed hitter and into the lefty. And he starts throwing some, and after about 4 or 5, I looked at him and I said, Mason, man, that's a really, really good slider. Really good. So let's just stay with that. That's going to be nasty enough. We're not going to call it cutter. You can if you want, but it's not. And I want you to, if you need to tell yourself throwing a cutter, that's fine. But that slider is going to play. We don't need a cutter now. So just continue to throw that one. And I think that's where you start looking at things. And it's like he set out to develop a cutter. He ends up with a better slider than the one he was throwing, which certainly adds to his pitch package.
No doubt. So, Coach Corral, how does the pitching coach, with all this information at their fingertips these days, how do they go about defining what it is that pitch profile should be for their guy? You can pull up on YouTube videos of Bartolo Colon throwing like 35 fastballs out of 40 pitches and it moving all over the place, and get really excited about trying to do that with one of your guys. How do you keep it simple? How do you understand what it is they do well and know where to start building from?
If you can go to my 5th slide, JR.
Yes, sir.
I think the big thing is to, understand that, your guys and what they're capable of doing, and as you're looking at big league guys, just because Bartolo Colon does it, I don't know that I could, get Ian Bedell to do it. So I gotta know where they're capable of. And when you look at, guys, you got to know, there's certain arm slots that deliver certain pitches, and that, you're obviously 3/4 and up, they can throw probably a good true breaking ball, curveball. And so once I get them to understand just from identifying them and then kind of knowing what type of pitches they would do, I guess rolling up to my rolling down a slide. Right. Yeah, that once I identify that, the simple thing as far as teaching guys to do stuff is, this little illustration that I have, the drawing there of, understanding the ball has parts, and knowing that the ball has parts. And, when Jerry asked me that question years ago, I said, he goes, "What are the parts of the baseball, Fred?" And I said, well, leather and seams. And he said, "No." He said, he goes, "You got a top part of the ball, you got a bottom part of the ball, you got a back of the ball, a front part of the ball, and the one closest to your ears, the inside part and the outside part." So looking at it in these autographed ball cubes, and, kind of identifies how you can get, the max fastball that you're going to throw, you're going to have to throw the back part of the ball. That's going to maintain the efficiency of the energy distributed behind the baseball. And any variation, that's why, our breaking ball and all that, we all know this, it cannot go as hard as the other stuff. Now, one of the things that, I do speak a lot about the natural arm movement. Outside guys that throw the ball straight over the top, by simply learning 100% fastball, they're going to attain movement just by the arm angle in which they distribute the pitch. So getting to that 100% fastball has been one of the tools that Rap Soto and the TrackMan mobile unit has been able to bring to the forefront for me. And outside of that, it's now a directional piece. You know, Coach Weinstein talked about the pitching in. Coach Yeskie talked about his success pitching in and all that. And I think once you establish throwing a ball to your catcher, I think where pitchers have a tough time is when we say, I'm going to throw a fastball in, or I'm going to throw a fastball away. If we can change that terminology to, I'm going to throw a fastball to the catcher who's setting up in, I'm going to throw a fastball to the catcher who's setting up away. And that diagram that I have of the three catchers, if you can imagine as a right-handed pitcher, you're throwing a fastball that that moves to that arm side into that yellow catcher. Simply directing yourself to the blue catcher would get that backdoor cut, that gapping, the left-hander fastball that Greg Maddux and Oral Hershiser did so well. And the little diagrams that I have there is, it's a directional piece for me. And if I can teach my guys to just simply direct themselves through their zone, like the hitting machine that had that video screen, that thing will precisely throw a fastball down the middle, down, away, and in. And I took a young pitching coach behind that screen, and I saw the machine itself, amazingly, did not think about its release point being within the diameter of a quarter. It just kind of rotated on its little stand to execute those pitches. So in like manner, if I could teach my guys that after they have the knowledge of how to move a ball, now you're throwing a glove side breaking ball, which is generally your sharpest breaking pitch, to backdoor that to a hitter. It's simply the same glove side breaking ball that you're throwing that you're directing to the yellow catcher. If your breaking ball was constantly going to the blue, you direct it to the yellow, and you got a very efficient backdoor.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach. Does anybody else have anything they'd kind of like to add to that about how you can go about understanding what it is your guy does well and building a pitch profile to kind of support that, things to look for? Yeah, feel free to jump in if anybody has anything they'd like to add.
I think you have to have a pretty good understanding of kind of how that guy's body moves in space. You know, I think we're quick to look sometimes, and that's the nice part about the data, is it gives us an idea of how spin is being imparted on the baseball. But if we want to take it right back to its roots, every guy moves differently. And some guys are just better set up with their movement patterns to perhaps throw a good sinker. Some of them maybe more so a cutter, or to get on the side of the ball and spin it more. So having a good understanding of really kind of how that guy's body moves in space and time is going to give you a little bit more of a roadmap of how you can connect the dots for that player, so that when you're asking him to execute a certain pitch, he might have a better understanding. If he's really a crossfire guy, is he going to work around the ball better? If he's a guy that starts to open up and work to the inside of the ball, is that changeup going to be more effective? And that's the thing I know that Jerry probably has the most experience of all of us, is seeing how that's really done on a global scale, because the Japanese are going to work to impart spin different than, say, the Cubans. Or when you get into some of the other aspects, I know that the Dutch are really aggressive in understanding how to do some types of different throwing that apply to their training. So when you look at that back, I think it's important to understand that if you're asking a guy to expand his pitch profile, you got to understand how he moves, so that he has a better understanding of how he's going to position himself to impart spin on that particular pitch.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach.
Hey, Jim, one thing.
Yes, sir.
I don't know about the global scale, but I know one thing, that the guys that have good fastball body movement and good movement profiles for their fastball can accomplish those other things by using that same movement profile and just throwing a different part of the ball with a different grip relative to depth or looseness or tightness, and everything comes off of fastball. So that's why the fastball is such a huge foundational pitch, because a downer curveball is just a fastball that you throw the front of the ball. Now, how you grip it and how you how you orient the seams and things like that certainly can enhance the break and so on and so forth. But again, back to the fastball, that you better develop fastball mechanics before you worry about anything else.
Nice. Well, thank you.
JR,
Yes,
I
sir.
can add to that. I can add to that too as well, because that's a great point by Nate and Jerry. Is, a lot of times we set out with pitch designs now, and we have the luxury of the high-power cameras, and we see the ball come out of the fingers. But a lot of times the inconsistency with the pitch development is done in the lower half of the delivery, and if the delivery is not fine-tuned to where the patterns are consistent and a little bit more efficient, then the pitch design is never really going to be had. It's not going to be gotten to, basically. And I give you a great example. I had a young man that he came in, he wanted to improve his breaking ball, and he said he needed to spin it better. It wasn't spinning, the spin efficiency wasn't enough. And I'm pretty fortunate at Vanderbilt to have the ground force reaction mount. So like Jerry said, I knew what his numbers were on his fastball. And he came in, he wanted the high-powered Edgertronic on, he wanted to see it and all this stuff. And I said, okay, sure. But the first thing you're going to do before you even get to that is you're going to throw your breaking ball with a fastball delivery on the ground force ball. You're going to create the same energy that you need to on your breaking ball, because I don't think you're doing it right now. Well, actually, I know you're not doing it because I have the data right here in front of me. So even before we got into it, he throws 2 or 3 pitches right there, and he's like, holy cow. So there was no pitch design. We didn't even need the camera that day. Rapsodo already told us it was a lower half deal where it just wasn't generating the same amount of force. And sometimes when things aren't happening at ball release, you got to go back down the chain a little bit and see if there's an inconsistency in the movement patterns. And that's really at any level, because a lot of guys now are in facilities and they're training with this equipment, and it's great. But if that doesn't get fixed at the bottom, it's not going to be consistent at the top.
That's awesome. Now this is kind of a little off script here. I want to say it was back in Anaheim. We had Rolando Garza, who was with Pepperdine at the time, and Young Jin Yoon on the main stage. And actually, it was Coach Rogers was presenting, and he had them kind of present a movement pattern program. Do any of you guys remember that presentation at all? It's something that we've shared within our ABCA coaching resource library in the pitching section, just because we were kind of floored at how simple it was, but also how important we felt it was to get that information out there. Coach Yeskie, we've shared a great deal of your movement program that you shared. I can't remember what was that also Anaheim that you spoke at? Indianapolis, that's what it was. We shared a bunch of your kind of mobility drills and how you get your guys loose from just an overall movement platform, so to speak. I guess my big question is, it's obviously, it's much more than the grip. It's the body. How would you kind of rate the importance of where things need to be trained, assuming it's a freshman kid coming into your program, a young pitcher? Give us a baseline average, like how much time should be spent on his movement preparation? How much time should be spent in his long toss throwing? Coach Blake, we'll kind of start off with you. How do you think you divide and conquer with a young kid coming in?
Yeah, I think you just really have to pay attention to where he's at. If you're lucky enough to have PTs that can do assessments to determine, a big issue that comes into play with pitching sometimes is we ask guys to get in positions that their body won't allow them to get in. And we're fighting an uphill battle in that setting. So I think that's where it starts. And for us, we're trying to run, if we have 16 pitchers on our staff, we're trying to run 16 different programs because it is laborious, but that's what they're going to connect with the most. And if we're trying to get performance, if we're trying to make sure we're on the same page and helping these guys develop, I think in a lot of scenarios, they don't need to work on what their teammate needs to work on. And sure, we have to do things as a team, and we have to come together in a number of different ways and practices. But as far as their throwing program, it's, you can have a guy with a great lower half that just really loses posture throughout his throwing process. You can have some guys that just really disconnect quickly from their lower half based on how they've trained. And we call these guys toe pushers, but you see them get really quad dominant get really on the front side of their body and have a hard time staying any kind of directional path towards the plate. And so, I know some experts would say the lower half is where you have to start, but I would just say where we can make the biggest impact and keep guys healthy is where we need to start. And, if guys come in having only thrown 3 or 4 days a week before they get on campus, then we've got to really develop just the overall workload threshold that they're able to adapt to, because that won't get through a college baseball season. And so, again, just it can be in any of those areas you mentioned, JR, because I think they're all incredibly important. But for us, if we can't identify the deficiency, then maybe we put that guy at risk.
Oh, that makes sense. So is there, if I'm the high school coach or the junior college coach or even the travel ball coach, is there some very simple, like, for example, we all remember sit and reach from PE class. Is that an assessment tool that we could find out if a guy is flexible enough to create the positions we want him to create on the mound? Is there something like that that you guys would recommend to these coaches who do not have the resources that y'all have, in a way that we can kind of assess, like, all right, well, this guy can't do this, or just throwing it out there? Nothing.
I mean, Jerry probably could talk to us about the sit and reach, I think, more than anything, right?
I can't touch my children's guys. I'll tell you one thing, relative to tight and loose movers. Sometimes tight movers are better pitchers. I think you got to be careful trying to make everybody mobile. Just from what I've seen.
I'm with you. Easy enough.
And I think a good resource, JR, might be Dr. Rose from On Base U. Just some assessments, simple, and lunges and different deals. I mean, he's got numerous podcasts out there for people that they could take a look at. I mean, that don't have resources. I mean, you could tell if a guy's stiff, mobile, where he might need some work, from anything. I just think the key is developing a routine. I don't get too many guys now, unfortunately, that come in that don't have some form of training regimen underneath them. And I think the important piece, like Dusty talked about, is deciding where is the most important parts. Do we need to make adjustments? Do we need to add to it? Do we need to take some stuff away? Is it too much? It's just different things like that. And, you just trust in your experience and what you see, and, that type of stuff more than anything. But it's getting them into a good routine that leads to success, daily more than anything.
Brownie, one thing for me, we do all these physical assessments and all that. And I think that the eyeball assessment without measuring a bunch of stuff sometimes is good, because then we see how guys, because by the time we get guys, especially at your level and our level, they're 15-year veterans of their mechanics, and they didn't get there because they're chopped liver. They got there because they're pretty good. And sometimes we should do the physical assessments, but we should see how they move first, rather than change their movement pattern just based on a physical assessment. That's all I'm saying.
Excellent, Jerry. Excellent.
Yeah, and just to add to what Jerry just said, a big thing is in knowing that, there is a risk of trying to get what we think perceived are the ideal measurements. When a guy's, like Jerry said, a 12-year veteran, you can put him in a very susceptible area of possibly getting hurt within a competitive atmosphere. So it's better, it's definitely learning your guys. And I learned that back in 1998. That there were some restrictions, and I generally look at those restrictions when like Randy Sullivan says, we address the pain. Well, it was with Matt Riley. Matt Riley came up with a shoulder problem, and we took him to the training room, and our trainer at the time, Arnaldo, laid him down on the table there, and he started looking at his legs as he's laying on the table, and I'm going, Arnaldo, what the heck are you doing? I said, his shoulder's bothering him. That's his leg. And he says, Fred, I'm looking to see the alignment of his hips, and right now, and he's showing me his feet. He goes, you can see that they're out of a line. He says, if I fix this, his shoulder pain will go away. And I went, okay, this is something I need to know.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing. Gentlemen, it's already 9:35. We usually say we do not ask another question. after 9:30. It's kind of, we won't start another inning after 9:30. So we'll kind of go around the horn, and I'll just, if you guys want to take a brief moment to, give any sort of final thoughts, anything you want to add. There's so much that we had kind of discussed over the past week that we haven't gotten to. And for the first time, we'll go kind of reverse alphabetical order. So, Coach Yeskie, you're going to be up first. Any final thoughts, closing stuff you want to leave our audience, our ABCA members with?
Well, I think in this day and age, there's a lot of information out there, and you're going to have to figure out really, that's the $1 million question, what applies to you? You get so many kids that might work out in a similar facility, or the ability to track them through social media online. You see what guys are their ratings are through an event, and some of those things just don't matter. Really what matters is what you do with your time that you have. A lot of guys, I think, especially when we're younger, they don't realize how valuable the time is that they have because they've got a lot of it. And they look at it in the sense that they'll kind of always get to something, and then that time is gone before they were able to utilize it in the fashion which was necessary. The game's getting younger to some degree. You're seeing guys that are able to move quick. I was able years and years ago, before I got into my college coaching, was coaching travel ball kids in Las Vegas. We had Bryce Harper's older brother. We had Chris Bryant's older brother. We had a lot of guys on that team whose younger brothers went on to play professional baseball at a high level. And you looked at what those kids were doing at a young age, and it was pretty unique, and their development worked so quickly because I think that they just took advantage of the time that they had. And, certainly being able to cross paths with the gentlemen on this panel and kind of, I think, follow their careers and their paths and what they're doing with their guys gives us a good measuring stick to look and see where we need to make some adjustments. The old saying that success leaves clues. Jerry's been doing this longer than all of us, and he's found a better way each time by utilizing that time to see if he doesn't need to reinvent the wheel or in some cases leave it alone. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we have is, what path or what rabbit hole we're going to go down with our time to figure out where we're going to get better. And ultimately, it's getting out there and getting your hands dirty. You got to work. You got to put in the work, and you got to do the things that are necessary, because at the end of the day, some guys may be more talented, some guys may have a better perspective, but the guys that put in the work, I think eventually are going to find a way to will themselves to having some success. And we've all had those guys on our pitching staffs that might be a little bit short in some of those areas, but they've just willed themselves to succeed. And, it's come through work, it's come through accountability and a lot of other things that we try to hang our hat on. But just keep educating yourself, keep working, and keep reaching out to the resources that are out there. I know that we try to reach out to one another when we're looking for answers and how we're going to relate those things. Fred may have a better way of saying it. Dusty may have a better kind of format or platform that he utilizes that has allowed him to have success with his guys. So I think the more that we continue to educate ourselves and use formats like this to kind of broaden our perspective will allow us to grow in those areas.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach. Thank you. Coach Weinstein, final thoughts for roughly 2,500 to 3,000 ABCA members watching that are interested in pitching. What do you got for them?
Well, as is evidenced by this panel, Weinstein excluded, the pupils have exceeded the teacher in our game, and there's so much great information out there. It's unbelievable. I know this wasn't the intent of this forum to talk about the mental game, but I think that in the future, the separator is going to be in the mental game relative to neuropsychology. And I always used to joke with Revisa and say, "Yeah, Ken," he said, "this game's 95% physical and 5% mental." He says, "Yeah, Weinstein, except the 5% mental controls the 95% physical." So let's not forget that.
That's an awesome story. Thank you, Coach. Coach Corral, final thoughts?
Yes, and I'm going to put myself on the clock with this one, but not to. I think what they've already added was pretty good. and I couldn't agree wholeheartedly. But I wanted to just kind of talk about and share with the audience, the difference in the windup and the stretch. When guys go into the stretch and they're asked to hold runners and they want to be quicker to the plate, one of the things that I would address, when you think about the delivery, I look at it in 5 areas of movements. The movement to get to the traditional balance position, the movement that you get to the position of separation, to the third movement to getting to your power position, to release, and to the finish. And I really want to address the second movement pattern of getting to separation. And if you could go to my 27th slide there, JR, I just want to show how the delivery comes together. And when you're looking to work with guys who can't pitch quickly out of the stretch, they have a tough time moving quickly and they lose their stuff. They lose some action. To keep the windup and the stretch together is that still picture of John Smoltz out of the windup and stretch. And as you see the video play, you can see that the delivery comes together in that secondary phase. And I really want guys to understand, if you're going to make guys quicker, look at video and see the similarities at that point of separation. Now, the next slide, I want to show the validity of this secondary phase, this movement pattern. I used to call it the secondary phase of balance. And that is, in the red, you can see this young man. He's going to throw out of the windup, and you can see his position out of the windup, and then you can see his position out of the stretch in the in this dead start position, where I have him just simply start in that position. And I've got the Rapsodo readings so that you wouldn't think there's any sorcery in this. And you'll see that, it's 91.7 miles an hour. You can see the spin rate is a bit different at 2138, I believe it is. And then as this video is playing, now we get him into this dead start position. And I generally put a bag on the ground or a block. And you can see this young man, Tommy Springer, starting from this position and then simply going. Now, again, he throws 91.7 miles an hour. And again, so I don't show you any witchcraft here, the pitch was 91.7, and you can see that the spin rate went to 22.55. Okay, so there was a separation of pitches there. And then to show it from the back, so it's just not a one-time thing, is you see him out of the windup. This one again, 91.7. Not only is it a good station in California on the radio, but it's a pretty good thing going on here in the bullpen. And with that, 91.7, 2387 on this spin rate. Now from this dead start position, and I got to find a better term for it because I don't like dead start. But you can see this pitch was at 91.2. So the efficiency, and people have asked me, why don't we just have guys start out like that? Well, obviously the peer pressure of the game going, what the heck's this guy doing? No one wants to do that. But if you can understand that position, you can understand the efficiency out of the windup and stretch.
Awesome.
And that's all I have. But I want to thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, Coach. Thank you. Thank you. Coach Brown, final thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, and I think during this time, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on tonight along with these great guys. But I think during this time, one of the beautiful things is you're seeing passion from guys that are involved in this game. And, just the guys on this panel to, a bunch of Zooms that we've been on, and the ability to share information. And like Nate said, there's so much information out there right now. It really, it can bog a player down. There's no question. And you really have to put your passion towards what matters to you and what you want to chase. I think too many guys just, they want to rebuild foundations. They want to chase things just because it looks cool right now. And it really comes down to, knowing who you are and being comfortable with who you are. But at the end of the day, how you use your time, you need to be passionate about it. If you don't have that, really, why are you doing it? And I think that's an important piece. And when you look at this group on this panel, their ability to share experiences with, with the whole audience and with us, that's where we all learn and grow inside this game. It's just, you got Jerry, Nate, and, Freddie and Yeskie just being across the field. I've had the opportunity to be across the field from all three of those guys a lot. and just, to see how they think and how things work, and to, maybe get a different perspective. I mean, that can go a long way for a lot of players and a lot of coaches out there. Just, open yourself up. It's okay to be vulnerable. We have things that need to be answered and things that we're missing, and the biggest thing, like I say always, is, it's good to read and it's good to always enhance your mind. Those are huge pieces, but pay attention during the game. Pay attention during the actual game. It will give you more feedback than you will ever see. Too many guys just, it's not on page 38. No, it's not. This is a different game. You're not playing checkers. This is chess, and there's some strategy that happens, and there's things that happen inside the game. And 10 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever it is, you're going to draw back on that experience, and you're going to go, I've seen this before. I've seen this. So thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Coach Brown. Coach Blake, you're closing it down, man. What do you
Awesome.
got for us? Final thoughts.
Awesome. Yeah. And really appreciate again the opportunity. This may be a little contrarian, but I think we just have to continue as a sport to have an honest conversation with our pitchers about command. Nobody paints. It's just not, it's not happening. If you go pick the best MLB game, the best college game, and you just bring up this where these pitches entered the zone, it's a pretty good mixture of pitches all over the zone. And what we consider mistakes or reasons that we're losing games, guys are doing it all the time. And I think that it's unfair to our players or our pitchers if we give them this interpretation of this is what has to happen, because candidly, it's not. And it makes them sometimes get lost down the wrong rabbit hole. We have to understand, one, that luck and randomness are a big part of this game. You can go back to the World Series from last year. Look at, Greinke gets a 2-0 pitch that looks like it's in the zone from the on-screen strike zone. He doesn't get it, ends up getting pulled out of that game. Harris comes in to face Kendrick, who I think was a 160, 170 batting average against, from what I remember. Harris throws a perfect command slider down and away on the black, on the edge, and it gets hit off the foul pole. We have to understand we can do everything right, and sometimes it's not going to go our way, and that's part of the game. And I think if our players understand that and we can help them with that as their coach, it helps us move past some of the things that I believe guys get lost with. And so just having an understanding of that and then really giving them tools to attack with and compete with, and just try to, again, like probably said too much tonight, like just try to win counts. For us, in every count we pitched in last year, over 90% of the time, it went against the hitter if we threw a strike. In every count, 3-1, 2-0. If we threw a strike, it was a foul ball, an out, or a strike to put the count further in our favor. And so if your pitcher's armed with something like that, it gives him maybe a little bit more conviction, a little bit more just competitiveness and how he's trying to attack the zone and winning counts and things like that. But if we want command to improve, give guys tools to help them understand what they're doing, and just continue to put them in an environment where we can develop that, but be on the same page with what command really is and the expectation.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach. Well, folks, that's about all the time we have this evening. I'd like to extend a huge thank you to our panelists, our production team, PAC Network, and our sponsor, Pocket Radar. These are the guys that made this happen. If you missed something or clicked into the conversation a little late, this episode will be available on demand within the Coaching Resource Library section of our website and our My ABCA mobile app, usually within about 24-ish hours or so. Make sure to tune in next week as we will discuss culture and program building with Coach Butch Chaffin from Cookeville High School in Cookeville, Tennessee. From Illinois, Todd Genke, St. Charles North High School. From Oklahoma, Jimmy Harris from Stillwater High School. From Alabama, Adam Mosley from Hoover High School. And from Ohio, Tim Sanders from Dublin Kaufman High School. On behalf of everyone here at the ABCA, our board of directors, executive committee, Craig Keilitz, John Litchfield, Juan Clark, Zach Hale, Matt West, Sarah Barlock, Ryan Brownlee, and Mike Odom, thank you and stay safe out there.
Tonight's episode of ABCA At Home Perspectives is made possible by Pocket Radar.
Pocket Radar's Smart Coach app system, with its unique ability to automatically capture videos with embedded velocities, allows coaches to stay connected and work remotely with current players and new recruits. Their Bring Your Training Home initiative will provide education and resources, including webinars and a limited time discount to help players remotely train, develop, and be seen at home with video analysis tools. Check out their 2020 Expo Theater presentation located in the ABCA Video Library.